The second Act 2 companion that we gain access to is the Aldari Yrliet. Yrliet is a sniper basically, and she's got two new little toys that have come in, which is the Path of the Outcast, which on kill allows her to get another attack this turn, and they've given her something called Deadly Accuracy, which is on critical hits she can apply flat damage equal to perception to her critical damage. Now, this isn't as big as a boost as it could be, but the other thing they've done is they fixed the critical damage applying on sniper rifles, and with the new talent, they've also updated the Wanderer's Potent that when performing a critical kill with the Wanderer's Potent, you can get an extra attack a turn. So she can generate 2 more attacks a turn than she could previously, and if you go into Bounty Hunter using something like the self-calibrating goggles, you can generate a 3rd attack. So you can get 3 extra attacks with her normal attack and her Claim the Bounty. So that's 5 attacks you'll see there. Deadly Accuracy can give a 6, and if you proc Expert Finesse, you can also gain a 7th. So there is quite good with the attack economy. I've been told by other creators that Yrliet as an assassin is very good in this patch. However, as long as exploits and openings don't work next turns, I don't see any value in assassin for my playstyle. Another thing that she got was in Act 2 is access to something called the Hunter's Father's Armor, which once per turn for 1 AP, the wearer regains all their MP and can make an additional attack this turn. However, this is not too useful early game because you suffer from attack economy issues with using operatives. So to use 1 AP to be able to make another 1 AP attack, that's going to be 2 in itself. And because we've got 2 other attack actions anyway, and one of them is limited to Deadeye Strike, that can be quite hard to manage just 4 AP in the early game. But this is something that will probably remain biz all the way through the game, because eventually you will lose access to the Wanderer's Potent because the damage just won't keep up and there's no upgrade to it. The Eye of Hecticon, whilst okay in Act 3, you need to hit 3 targets for it to refund an attack, so it's less useful. But even in the early game, Yrliet will come in and she'll hit quite hard. And you'll notice with the way that they've changed some of the things, it will actually be quite a little bit more impressive than it was previously. So if I stack up some enemies here for her to take some shots at, just so you can sort of see what she's got access to, then yeah, you can start making some judgments for yourself. So as you can see, good crit damage there, and however the so that's going to refund an attack for us, which is pretty nice, but it's going to be a little bit hard for us to then take advantage of being able to get extra attack economy from hitting someone that's already been stunned. But now that we've hit this stun target, we can obviously follow up with Claim the Bounty, but we won't get access to that refunded attack because we're going to be out of AP. Or so I say, but that gave us 1 AP back so we can make another attack. Goody goody. So yes, early damaging coming in quite well, and that was just from the Bring It Down. We've taken out multiple targets. Yes, you could have done more of a shotgun or a burst, but that is the nature of single shot weapons in this game. If we look at Yrliet at a later stage in the game, such as in Act 3, as I said, you'll get the Eye of Hecticon, that if you manage to hit 3 or more targets, this attack has no cooldown. In my entire gameplay, I have never got this to proc once, so it's not exactly useful, and as you can see, the Wanderer's Potent is dropping off quite a bit, and you're even going to start getting access to more weapons that are just going to start outclassing on damage, so trying to keep up the attack economy from using it is going to feel like a bit of a chore and a bit of a burden. However, you are going to see some item upgrades, especially if you go down the Bounty Hunter route, and there will be sniper rifles that will build into the Apex Predator gloves even more because you can mark targets with prey using the Apex Predator gloves. But because you're not going to be moving too much, Bead of Concentration helps with some of the AP issues, and so does Metronome, which will actually stack after bonus turns to bring it down, and you're still going to want to use the Hunter Father's Armor. But whilst self-calibrating goggles are going to be something that you're going to want on other assassins that might be using Death Aura build or another Bounty Hunter like Pascal, you can still use those and pick up other items for Yrliet, which aren't as strong like the Outcast Visor as it is once per turn. So checking in here, we are seeing some much better damage numbers, and if we aim to follow up to hit these enemies here, we can refund some of that AP cost. So we are able to get some AP coming in back. And then if we want to then finish off some of these enemies, we can even take another shot to try and do this. Or we can even use something like our exploits here to guarantee that we get the damage needed if we didn't miss. How very disappointing. But coming back round to a main turn on Yrliet, see, she has managed to gain, obviously, the extra stuff that we were seeing on that metronome coming into those stats. So hopefully now we'll be able to make those follow-ups and finish these targets, and now that we have some exploits in play, we might be able to do some better damage here. Ideally, we do want to manage to kill an enemy with Claim the Bounty to obviously refund some of these costs, and getting that crit kill is going to do exactly that. So with that now having scored a hit, we can even use something like our Wild Hunt, which is, or should be, no longer bugged, and we'll have to have a see of that. So yep, firing off 2 more hits that coming in there, which is going to be quite nice. And having a second bounty hunter that has saved the kill, you can actually keep exploits up, so you'll be able to cycle that for Yrliet. So in this case, we're going to start doing some more impressive damage numbers to help continue going and picking off these targets. As well as also potentially providing some new things for Yrliet to take shots at. Because right now, I believe that, Ymirius is actually in our line of sight here, which I didn't think she was. So I will set up a trap for her, so when she tries to move on us later. So we can take in our shots. She's obviously had her armor drop down quite nicely by Pascal, so we can get some extra damage here. But obviously trying to follow up on attacks, we're still going to have those limits of the attack economy that you just saw from that last attack. Potentially we can also set more praise, which is also very good because we were able to pick up some stuff from Claim the Bounty and from the heroic action. But the damage numbers, like I said, without much officer support, operatives and snipers are still just not as impressive as they could be. But when it comes to a character like Yrliet, it's less about trying to win the battle with her and more about how you control the flow of it, because at the end of the day she is an operative, and snipers, I'm sorry to say, are not the primary damage class. They are designed to impact the enemy's gameplay and slow them down. They're not ever going to be the highest damage output because exploits don't work on extra turns, and even if you go assassin, they don't work on extra turns. And when it comes to getting the most benefit out of a bounty hunter, you need to be fighting against high tier enemies. So as you can see now, we're going to have a much better time with buffing up Yrliet and having her do damage because we've come back around to a Finest Hour turn. And from Finest Hour, we actually remove the attack caps that would otherwise hold her back. So we can look for some higher tier enemies and we can mark them to see what we can do about picking them off, because killing these higher tier enemies will actually provide us the option to have more attacks coming in. And unfortunately, these enemies here do not currently have exploits on them because they did not come in from one of our main attacks, but we're going to have a lot of AP to play around with. So if I start by taking a shot on this Incubus to try and do whatever damage we can, I'm going to swap over to a Deadeye shot from the Claim the Bounty, because even though we refund the attack economy, we'll get another hit coming off here from Expert Finesse, which will reload our gun quite nicely. And we can use Pascal here to team up with her to obviously take off some points. And we can start tagging some more prey, which Yrliet, whilst she won't gain those benefits, will actually allow Pascal to take some extra turns. And she's going to start seeing some big damage increases coming in from her extra stuff, from her, well, killing off all these targets. And we can even pop on joint analysis that she will benefit from. So with Pascal, obviously stacking up all this extra little bit of damage, now hopefully we'll be able to make a very nice shot. So we're going to click on for Precise Attack and obviously Cold and Bold, and we're going to be seeing all these buffs coming in for when we do take this shot at Ymirius. And that's what we like to see. That was a good 969 damage shot, which will proc her extra interrupt turn. She does, however, run straight through the trap that I'd set for her, and I was hoping that she wouldn't be able to just run through. But with all these extra damage stacks that have now been set up, we're going to have a pretty good time at clearing up. And because of we've been killing high tier enemies, as you notice, I have generated an obscene amount of MP if we did need to move, as well as I still have quite high attack economy left because I've been picking off higher tier enemies. This is one of the big benefits that you will see from being a bounty hunter. And follow-up shots, you can pick off key targets, as you'll see me do. One of the other issues you're going to run into is reloading your guns, but because I have Expert Finesse, when I killed Yrliet, she actually took another shot and reloaded her sniper rifle, so it's another way that you can avoid that being an issue. Wow, did not expect to see that attack miss. But what I am using Pascal to do is to help, because as I said, they work in a very good pair function. And with that in mind, she can then start clearing up stuff on the battlefield here. I'm even going to pop Stim to get these extra little bits of AP. And yes, I know this is technically a turn 2 clear, but that was because I had to skip a little bit, because you could have done this last turn, but I think it was important to show what she could do by herself, rather than what she would do straight from the finest hour. But as you can see, I have hit the attack cap that you can be given from Officer. I would have still had actually some AP left over because I gained 4 from my Stim, but that's still 7. So there would have actually been quite a bit of left over for Yrliet here. But I can use this as an opportunity to reposition ourselves to finish the combat. Because obviously after you move, you lose the bonuses of her sniper talent. But because I'm going to technically end the turn here, I can then bring her back a new turn, which now no longer counts as being part of that turn, so I'll actually have some of those sniper perks coming back. Which means that I can then start shooting at these grotesques, which are going to take a lot of damage, because I've built up a lot of stacks of my armor pen from my talents coming in from the bounty hunter. So if you look here, we've got our base damage, joint analysis coming in, listening of hatred, which was boosted from Argenta. We got sharpshooter back because we moved but then ended our turn. Deadly accuracy is adding 21 to the crit damage. We've got cutthroat coming in here, the fact that we're using a sniper rifle. Hunt down the prey is giving us 150 crit bonus, which is quite nice. Then we've got our normal crit modifier coming in here. We've got our modifiers for base analysis, enemies here, ballistic calculation, 6.5 fresh target coming in, hunting surge, which is going to be from our bounty hunter, and we're seeing commands monticle. And as you can see, the enemy defenses aren't even being shown because we are basically ignoring the enemy defenses because we've beat them so hard. So claim the bounty here will not only refund us multiple parts of our attack and AP, so we can make it off 8 with another attack, but it also gave us another option to use prey. So we can now mark this target as prey. Unfortunately, because I already used that Stim, I probably shouldn't have. It's not going to do as much damage as we could have done, but it is going to still hit this guy very hard, and doing up to almost 500 damage in Act 3 is still fairly respectable damage to be doing. As we look towards the end game for what we're seeing on Yrliet, like I said, there are some sniper rifles you'll find, like the Gift of Kernus, that a deadeye shot from this weapon will inflict prey effect on the target. So there's more ways that you can abuse stuff like the Apex Predator gloves, and with items like Elderflow, you can make the first attack in the combat cost 0 AP, and whenever the wearer attacks an enemy and triggers an exploit with this attack, the triggered exploit's calculated if it had +1 additional. That's not too important. Another item I like is arm piercing ammo. The wearer's single shot and deadeye shots reduce the target's deflection by damage dealt, so you can reduce some of the stats there. I'm still seeing the Hunter's Father's armor as one of the best ones, along with her Wraithbone necklace to get the agility and perception. Good upgrade from Sharpshooter boots. Obviously, you can use the Eye of Hecticon to generate MP if you do ever need to move, though there are other rifles you can pop in this secondary. Outcast Visor is a good alternative, but I still think the self-calibrating goggles are better. However, they're just currently in use on other characters at the moment. Another item that you could swap out the Apex Predator gloves is you can always give her the Death Dealer gloves. The wearer's damage is increased by 2% for each critical hit and each enemy killed until the end of combat. So Overpen should be triggering that, though I haven't double-checked to confirm that. But if we're looking at some of the other sniper rifles that Yrliet now has access to, you can use the Jukari ones, though I don't feel like they benefit as much as they did previously. previously. Obviously the Guardian Long Rifle has some good damage coming into it. You have stuff like the Chorus of Battle, which have some hilarious effects to use this as a secondary weapon, which is whenever the wielder attacks with weapon hits, when this weapon hits, all of their allies adjacent to the target make attacks of opportunity against it. That will trigger your arbiters with shotguns as well as your melee characters to attack. You then also have the Wanderer's Potent, which again, it just kind of drops off for its damage potential. You have stuff that is useful in Act 3, like Yrliet here. The Blessing of Death is also another good one. An attack with this weapon does 50% more damage to targets at 4 wounds, so that can help guarantee to get those one-shot pickoffs. Stuff like Lullaby of Shale. Whenever the wielder's attack with this weapon scores critical hit, the base damage is increased by +5 until the end of combat. So that is something that can stack, and that is something that can be very good to have in your secondary to start stacking that up. Stuff like Bane Sorrow I don't think is as good. Her melters do gain bonuses from deadly accuracy, but I've not really found any ones that were particularly good. I was told that there was a sniper rifle melter, but I obviously did not find it in my run. And like I said, with her new talents that we've got coming in with this update, she is better. She's probably still the weakest companion that you have, but she's better than she was. So she's mostly being held back by the fact that she's an operative. Operatives not getting exploits next turn is a huge nerf to them. An operative is the weakest archetype in the game, but she is still very usable, and she gets some very good stat bonuses coming to agility and perception by being Aeldari, and she does get some very good equipment. Her equipment does make her the best operative sniper just because she has access to all this Aeldari stuff. If I was looking at the other armors, they are fairly unimpressive. So Kane's Revenge, whenever this wearer dodges an attack, they can immediately counterattack, even counterattack with a ranged weapon in melee. The counterattack deals 40% of the weapon damage and cannot be more than 100%. Now, you can use this with something like Swift Shroud Cloak in Act 4 to abuse it by just running at enemies running away, and it causes attacks of opportunity, which then cause revenge attacks, and it will also generate you MP. But it's such a gimmick, I didn't really feel like I needed to build into that. Stuff like the Flexi Armor, not too useful. There are some very useful ones that you could potentially get from some of the Drukhari ones, and the same for some of her armors that still apparently haven't received their updates and their names to actually tell you what they do yet, which comes from her personal quest slide. But I feel like what I've put on here is the better one. And like I said, with obviously now having access to deadly accuracy, which will critical damage increased by the character's ranged weapons increased by a flat bonus of 10, and that's not base damage, as well as having access to Path of the Outcast, which those kills with single shot attacks from an Aeldari weapon first time in the round she immediately gains another attack, is very useful. So her attack economy is better. But let's go into the build and see what we're working with. So let's have a look at Yrliet's pre-made build. She comes at level 15, so we can't change any of this, and there is a lot of issues with Operative's kit. Even though 1.5 has made every build much, much stronger, there are still some glaring issues with some of the archetypes. Vanguard, Assassin, Operative. All of them need heavy reworks, or at least fixes to some of their core kit to make them more useful. So analyze enemies is what comes in first. At the start of each turn, the operative inflicts 1 stack of the exploit effect on all enemies in the operative's line of sight. If the operative hits a target with an exploit stack, the attack deals 5 times perception % bonus damage. The damage is also increased by 10% for each exploit on the target. The attack removes all exploits from the target. This actually has a current bug. Burst fire weapons and area weapons gain the damage increase but do not consume the exploits, so they won't proc Tide of Excellence, but it's a good way to stack some damage. Just knowledge for knowledge. Yrliet builds into awareness, so she can be good for spawn stuff. She then gets exposed weakness at rank 3. The operative removes all exploits from the target, decreasing the target's dodge, parry, and armor. By exploits removing with perception bonus percentage until the start of the operative's next turn. If this ability reduces the target's armor to 0, the operative removes only half the exploits from the target. The second part is very useful here because you need exploits for almost all of your mechanics. Dismantling attack is the heroic action, which is unfortunately not very good for single shot weapons. The operative immediately inflicts +1 exploit on each enemy in combat, then makes a free attack against the target. You can even use a ranged weapon in melee range. This attack always hits. Until the end of combat, the target of the attack suffers 30% -2 armor, block, dodge, and parry. Very good with an arc rifle, not so good with a sniper rifle. The next one that she takes is Sharpshooter. This is a talent that needs some major buffs. The operative has not moved this turn. They deal +3 more damage with single shot attacks, which is divided by 2, which again, Yrliet's not very good with. For every 5 cells between them and the target. 5 cells is a lot of space, by the way. So to even get +6, it needs to be 10 whole cells. So you're about 11 cells away. And the targets gain And they also gain plus 10 ballistic skill. So this is perception bonus ballistic skill. So that's quite useful and that's always on. These bonuses do not stack and last until the operative moves. If you move, you can't use this. This means you are not allowed to move to get bonuses. That is very counterproductive. How are you meant to get into the right position for a shot if you then can't use this talent? They then take perception and nimble. Nimble gives you extra dodge, which can be useful, especially if you're going into the assassin route. Ballistic calculation, something that sounds fantastic, but then also has more issues. So if the operative attacks a target affected by an exploit from a distance of 5 cells or further, that the minimum range of that gets decreased by your perception. That attack deals 15% more damage. They need an exploit on them for this to work. Extra turns, this talent is dead. You then gain more perception. You then get precise attack. For the next attack against a target affected by an exploit. Do you see why I think Operative is the weakest archetype in the game? You need exploits on enemies which only apply on your main turn. They do not apply when you use Bring It Down. They do not apply when you use Finest Hour. Meaning, because of how random initiative is, you could have the maximum agility and perception and still go dead last because of initiative is not normalized. And because of that, that means that this isn't very useful and it doesn't play into the core functionality of the game, which is hyper aggressive, multiple attacking. So on higher difficulties, Operatives suck. On lower difficulties, they might seem more powerful, but I don't play on lower difficulties. She then gets Fresh Target, which does extra perception damage to enemies at full health, but this can easily be turned off by if any of your allies have abilities like when they move their pet, it does 3 damage. That immediately makes you lose 20% damage, and again, it is a one-off buff. It could be a lot more, in my opinion. For some reason, they decided in her default build, she needed swift movements on a character that is not allowed to move. Hopefully someone at Owlcat can explain that to me one day. She then takes Dismantling Attack Upgrade 3, which reduces enemies in a 5-cell radius and their dodge and arm by 15%. Yet, considering that Blade Dancer from their heroic completely strip enemies' armor and then has that permanent upgrade, why this is a once-off, I do not know. She then builds into Lord Xenos, gets more Bliss skill, gets Insightful Precision, which again grants operative bonus to perception equal to the number of exploits removed. Great, another talent that we'll never see any benefit from. Picks up Medicaid, so she can use Medicaid kits. Gets Perfect Spot, which is very good. Gets extra perception and ballistic skill when she's in cover. Gets Las Weapon Expert. Enemies suffer minus 20% dodge against Las Weapons, so that helps you here. Comprehensive Analysis. If the target of analyzed enemies has 2 or more exploits, they suffer 1 additional exploit. Chances are that won't work because they need to have 2 exploits on it and they'll only have 1 and only if they're in your line of sight, and she doesn't have Uncanny Sight, so once again this feels like a dead talent. She then gets more Bliss skill, more intelligence, Swift Sight, which is the upgrade to In My Sight, which is her unique ability, which is one of the worst abilities in the game, which is Yrliet ends her turn. At the start of her next turn, excluding extra turns, if possible, she makes an attack that cannot miss and does not count towards the attack limit. This is only useful on a bounty hunter because when you use Share the Spoils and you get those extra turns where you can't attack, you can actually set up on multiple different, not the same, but different targets in my sight. So when she gets her main turn, she can then take a bunch of extra shots. A gimmick and a barely usable one at that. Lastly, she finishes off with Dismantling Attack Upgrade 4. The target also provides an attack for opportunity whenever it attacks. Absolutely useless to her because chances are they're not going to survive her focus firing someone. So like I said, I don't know why they didn't change her base build. I don't know why they didn't buff operative. It really needs it. It really, really does. When it comes to tier 2s, Yrliet having access to 3 extra attacks in the early game is incredibly useful, but Assassin is just not the path, because Assassin is entirely reliant on an Act 4 item and you can only build 1. The damage is low, the benefit is almost non-existent, and in any encounter that has elite enemies, Bounty Hunter just does more. Assassin also needs openings which do not work on extra turns, so when Yrliet's tier 1 doesn't work on extra turns, picking a tier 2 that also doesn't work on extra turns is just asking for a redundant character that's going to drag you down. With that in mind, Bounty Hunter is going to be doing a lot of work to try and hard carry Yrliet back into relevancy. Hunt Down the Prey is the first ability that comes on here, which is you can mark 3 enemies as prey, and when you kill them, you can gain bonuses. 1 to 2, 25% of the Bounty Hunter's maximum wounds become 25 temporary wounds. 3 to 4, 5 times the prey's difficulty tier percentage bonus critical damage, and 2 times the prey's difficulty tier critical hit chance till the end of combat, and 5 and above is all of the above. Now, The main issue that I have with this and why Bounty Hunter doesn't complete with Arc Militant on soldier builds is most encounters do not have elite enemies. It's very rare that you'll see tier 3, let alone tier 4, which you need for a lot of your abilities to use Bounty Hunter. So the actual encounters themselves need a buff. We need more elite enemies in these encounters to make Bounty Hunter worthwhile, but you're still going to get more mileage than if you go with Assassin. First ability that we get here is Claim the Bounty, because it increases our attack economy. The Bounty Hunter makes a free single attack with the selected weapon. This attack always hits and does not end the Bounty Hunter's movement, but only deals 4 times ballistic or perception bonus of the Bounty Hunter's user damage. With buffs, this can go above 100%, so this can be a damage enhancer. After each third enemy killed by Claim the Bounty Hunter recovers 1 charge of Hunt Down the Prey. If Claim the Bounty kills a target marked as prey, the Bounty Hunter receives plus 2 AP. Incredibly useful for generating AP. Hunting Surge, or here you can take Hunter's Ambush, depending on who has the self-calibrating goggles. Whenever an enemy is killed by a critical hit scored by the Bounty Hunter or their ally, the Bounty Hunter gains 2 times the enemy's difficulty tier damage for 2 rounds. So that's why I said you need higher tier enemies. Alternatively, you could take Hunter's Ambush here and then take that later, which is when the Bounty Hunter performs a single shot attack on an immobilized or stunned target. This attack refunds the cost and does not count towards the attack limit. Self-calibrating goggles mean your single target hits will inflict stun, so that's why this is incredibly useful. Wild Hunt then comes in, which does seem to be working now, which is pretty nice. The Bounty Hunter simultaneously makes several attacks. The number of these attacks is equal to the number of prey in combat. These attacks are equally divided amongst all prey in the Bounty Hunter's line of sight. These attacks always hit and always score critical hits. Do not try to use this on enemies outside your range. It will cause the ability to do nothing. Rank 5 will get AP increase, Bliss skill, and then Path of the Outcast, which is when Yrliet kills a target with a single shot attack from an Audari weapon. For the first time around, she immediately gains an additional attack. This is why Drukhari weapons are less beneficial on her now. We then need to start increasing intelligence. Then we get Hunter's Ambush, which we've already gone over. Cold the Bold is very nice for her. The Bounty Hunter's next attack this turn will have additional effects. Deals an additional plus 7 damage. The target's armor will be reduced by 3 times the target's difficulty tier percentage against all the Bounty Hunter's attacks until the end of combat. If the target's armor against this attack is below 20%, the target's dodge is also reduced against all the Bounty Hunter's attacks until the end of combat. Additionally, damage from the Bounty Hunter's attack is increased to plus 17. It's pretty good. If the target of the attack is marked as prey, its armor and dodge are also reduced against the attacks of the Bounty Hunter's allies. Pretty nice. Flay the Bolt then comes in, which is you can remove deflection, willpower, and toughness. Move gets more Lorzino's perception, deadly accuracy. This is very good for getting in some extra crit damage, and it is flat damage, not base damage, which is unfortunate. Base damage would have been pretty big. So unfortunately to you rune cannon lovers, no, the rune cannon is not going to replace the heavy bolter on your soldier build because it still does not compete in damage. Heightened concentration is a very vital key and talent here, which is what actually makes Bounty Hunter so strong. Whenever the Bounty Hunter scores a critical hit, they gain 10% armor penetration until the end of combat, and this stacks. So this is based on perception. 10% armor pen is more than 10% damage. This is an MVP talent and the whole reason you go into Bounty Hunter. Lorzino's agility. Agility is also good for dodge and initiative, so you do want that. Save the kill. This is very effective for when you then pair her up with another bounty hunter like Pascal. Whenever prey that is not being trailed is killed by an ally, the bounty hunter gains extra turn with half their MP and AP. The bounty hunter cannot attack during this turn. Now, if two different bounty hunters mark different targets, they can't actually gain the benefit from killing them. But if either of them kill them, it will proc save the kill. So this is why it's useful to have two, because you can set up multiple save the kill, so you can keep setting up exploits. This is a way to work around not having exploits, and that Yrliet can set up her in my sights. We get more awareness, more perception. Drukhari weapon proficiency. This is preparing for Act 3. If you're not taking on to Act 3, you can use a different talent here. I get Ensnare the Prey, because again, preparing for Act 3. If you're not going to Act 3, do pick something different, like Hot on the Trail. Spiraling Trophy then comes in, which is whenever the bounty hunter kills a prey, his difficulty tier is 4 higher. The bounty hunter additionally gains 2 AP. That's very useful. You can also put an Expert Finesse here and then trade in Inspiring Trophy where Expert Finesse is. But again, you still need tier 4 enemies. Then we get Intelligence, Awareness, and level 18 Expert Finesse. When the bounty hunter kills an enemy, his difficulty tier is 4 higher. The bounty hunter immediately reloads their weapon, attacks the closest enemy in their line of sight. This attack gains 50% over penetration, but only deals 4 times ballistic score plus perception, % of the bounty hunter's usual damage. And like I said, this is very good for getting around the reload costs of sniper rifles, which are very high. It's 3 AP, which is crippling for an operative, but this will get you free reloads, and you can also get 2 different ways to generate AP now, which means that bounty hunter on Fire and Sow will more likely run out of the 12 attacks before it will actually run out of AP. Drukhari equipment, again, setting up for Act 3. If she's not going to Act 3, don't bother with it. Lastly, we get the Wild Hunt Upgrade 3. Whenever the Bounty Hunter attacks exactly one target, which is marked prey with Wild Hunt, this attack deals 300% damage. And yes, I actually do enjoy Yrliet as a bounty hunter, as much as I gave scathing critique because basically the developers do need to buff operative. This is actually a very viable and fun setup, and it is the only thing keeping Yrliet relevant because Assassin's not very good for her, Grand Strategist is not very good for her, and Executioner is very gimmicky. And if you do want to know about Executioner, do look at my 1.4 build because you can still use that. As we get into Exemplar, we can start picking up the talents that Yrliet is sorely missing. Now, one of the first ones that I always take, and like I said, depending on your playstyle, you can change this. And yes, Eager for Battle does benefit Finest Hour. I have double confirmed, dear commenters. Yeah, Eager for Battle, plus 2 AP in the first round of combat. Quite useful, especially for how AP hungry operatives are. Uncanny Sight actually fixes her not applying exploits to enemies she can't see, which should probably be a default ability. I go for Awareness and Withdraw. Withdraw you don't need here, but I like to take Withdraw because in Act 3, you're going to be in trouble when enemies run at you trying to hit you, and this will guarantee you your first dodge to help you survive. I get Bliss skill. Grenadier, as always, is super important for Iron Grenades to armor strip enemies to do even more damage. Joint Analysis can allow Yrliet, when she can't attack with Uncanny Sight, to give her intelligence extra damage to allies, so it is a good +6 base damage coming in there. Some Awareness, then we get Great Defense, best damage rider in the game, so more attacks, more damage. Pierce the armor. Whenever the bounty hunter scores a critical hit, the target's armor is reduced, so yeah, more armor pen, less enemy armor, all good. Bliss skill, we then get Tide of Excellence, which is incredibly important. Every time the operative triggers an exploit on an enemy, the operative gains +1 damage and 2% armor penetration. Like I said, area weapons and burst weapons were not triggering exploits, which is why I wasn't seeing benefit of that. This should work with Overpen because it currently works with arc rifles and lightning rifles that jump around. Not confirmed, actually. I've not bothered to check to see if Tide is applying because exploits aren't normally up when I shoot people, so I'm not sure. I assume that is working correctly still. Hot on the Trail, yep, is very good because you can trail a target and you can increase your attack economy and your turn economy with this. The Bounty Hunter designates an enemy in a 10-cell radius as trailed and finishes its turn. Make sure you have AP when you do this. If an ally kills a trailed enemy, the Bounty Hunter gains an additional extra turn after that ally's turn, with all AP and MP remaining from the moment the Bounty Hunter used Hot on the Trail. Very good for, obviously, the AP generating Bounty Hunter. The Bounty Hunter gains an additional 2 plus the target's difficulty tier MP. The cooldown of Hot on the Trail is reset. When Hot on the Trail is used for a third time during the combat, the Bounty Hunter recovers 1 charge of Hunt Down the Prey. I have never been in the combat where I've been able to use this 3 times. Combats don't last 3 rounds. More agility. Trail and Shatter, which removes the range and also reduces enemies' armor by 30%, which is incredibly good for helping allies armor strip. Character Train Perception, because we want more perception. Leads Xenos. Death Dealer, because more attack economy, more good. When the character kills an enemy in a round, that character immediately makes an additional attack against closest enemy they can target with the same weapon if possible, using whichever attack costs the least AP. This attack deals 30% base damage plus 10% bonus for the difficulty tier of the first enemy killed, i.e. if the enemy with difficulty tier 1, it would be 40%. Difficulty tier 4, it would obviously be 70%. So yeah, unfortunately, not many elite enemies to get much damage out of that. AP increase, combat insight, very good. The operative's perception is 10 or higher. This is the bonus. They gain 1 AP and ignore enemies' deflection. Very good for the final boss, in fact, who has 50 deflection. More Xenos. Sniper Expertise. Per spot additionally grants the operative 15% arm penetration against enemies that are 7 cells or further away. Big damage boost here. More Medicae. Like I said, Sniper Expertise is going to be doing more than Ballistics calculation. Probably fresh target. Gruesome Kill is something that you can take instead of Withdraw if you don't want it there, which is whenever the prey is killed, all enemies in a 10-cell radius around the prey have their agility reduced by 5 times the prey's difficulty tier for 2 rounds. Something, again, that has limited mileage by the fact that most enemies are low tier. More Perception, Medicae, and then we get Deadly Aim. So the character's dodge reduction is higher than the enemy dodge before applying heavy armor percentages. The character's damage against the enemy is increased by 1% for every 5 difference between the enemy's dodge reduction and the enemy's dodge. You could take Vital Points here. I'm not sure if Vital Points is working, however, so it is up to you to test and pick that yourself. If you can confirm it is or isn't working, do let me know on the Discord. We then get Continuous Analysis, which is at the start of the operative's turn. The enemy with the largest number of stack of exploits receives an additional exploit stack, so it's just 1, but you need them to have 2 to use the other tier tier 1 talent, so they kind of need to go together. Shed spoils. Whenever an ally kills the prey, the bounty hunter gains half the bonuses granted by hunt down the prey, so that's useful to not lose out on bonuses. You could even take that instead of withdraw. Medicaid coming in here, weak body, weak soul, which is lowering enemies' toughness and willpower, which is quite useful on those exposed weaknesses. Character training intelligence, you do need because she has very low intelligence. Well, she is a Xenos. Then we've got piercing shot. The bounty hunter's next attack during this turn will have 100% over penetration and 20% arm penetration. The arm penetration is obviously more than a 20% damage boost. And prey, the attack against target marked as prey, is always a critical hit. Get some intelligence. I take vital points at the end, but like I said, I'm not sure if it's working. So if you were following this, you could change that to extermination. Or you can keep it as is. And we also get Piercing Rune. Each enemy affected by piercing shot has their arm reduced by 7% until the end of combat. And we finish up with an AP increase, which will complete Yrliet's build. As stated, I do have a lot of issues with where Optiv currently is in the metagame, and I hope that when we do the customer survey feedbacks 1.5 in Reddit from Owlcat, that I myself will be recording my feedback so people can see what I'm putting, but I hope other people mention that they would like to see some buffs to Operative as well as some game difficulty increases such as this extra difficult brutal mode that Starrick had previously floated ideas from. But yeah, Yrliet did not benefit from base build changes, which there's a lot. Like Nimble, optional. Bliss Calculation, not really doing anything for her, so Tide could have been better, but both still require exploits. Fresh Target is fine. Sightful Precision and Precise Attack, again, requires exploits, so I don't think they're very useful here. Swift Movements is actually counterproductive to her having Sharpshooters, so that shouldn't be in there at all. I think in my sights needs upgrading, so Swift Sight doesn't feel very good to me. Comprehensive Analysis isn't even usable without continuous analysis, so that is kind of stupid that they have that on there, whilst Perfect Spot's fine. I do think Bounty Hunter is the only thing that is recovering Yrliet as a playable character. But alternatively, if you do want to run her as an assassin, you can run her as an assassin, but I just don't feel like it's very good because it relies on an Act 4 item, and to say that here is my build that won't be online till hour 100 plus doesn't feel very good as a content creator. So it's up to you what you want to do. On lower difficulties, Assassin will be absolutely fine. For higher difficulties, you're probably going to want to stick to Bounty Hunter or just play whatever you want. You could go Grand Strategist even though she has no intelligence, and if that's what you want to do, then go for it, because at least exploits will be up so you can use the exploit talents. Or you can just create a character like Idra to be a Grand Strategist solely just for spreading exploits turn 1 and then have her missionary over the rest of the turn. But I've been Rem619, this is my Yrliet build. We're going to be starting the Act 3 companion soon, so we can go over some of my favourite upgrades, which is looking at Ulfa. And Ulfa has had some fantastic upgrades. Unfortunately, Manzahai is still in a bit of a bad spot because Shearing Strikes are still bugged, but I have got the mod creator of the Shearing Strikes mod to update the mod for 1.5, and I've put him in contact with the devs so he can explain how it's done, so we'll have to see if that gets patched anytime soon. But till next time, I'll see you all around. Thanks for stopping by.